All right, I've got the car all packed up. I've got my big TV eyelashes on. And we are ready to rock some television. What's shaking, bacon? I'm Joni Simon. Welcome to my studio. This is where I do food photography. So if you're into that, you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. But today we're actually going outside of my studio and into a TV studio, because on an every so often basis, I do local morning TV segments, do little cooking demos. You know, you've seen those before, right? And so I handle all of my own styling, but sometimes I also handle the food styling on TV for some of my clients. But if you really get into the whole world of food styling, there might come a time and place when you actually have to do the food styling on a TV set. So I wanted to make sure to walk you through the process, equip you with some of the things that I have learned now, having done over about 150 TV segments. Now you might be thinking, wait, how do you even get into doing food styling for TV? How do you get into doing local TV segments? All that kind of stuff. Do you make money doing this? Very frequent question I get. Well, I will be answering all of those in a live Q&A session on Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you come on back here to this channel. I'll be live. You can ask me any questions you want. Happy to answer all of those for you. But in the meantime, I am preparing for a morning TV segment. I am going to be cooking up one of my favorite Easter dessert recipes. These little meringue nests with lemon curd, and oh my gosh, you are going to love them. If you actually want the recipe, I've got it linked down below. But you're probably not here for the recipe. You're here for the food styling tips. So with no further ado, let's jump into my top 10 tips if you are ever going to do food styling for a live morning TV segment. Tip number 1, always buy more ingredients than you think you're gonna need, because for any given recipe that's happening during a live cooking demo, there are at least 3 batches worth going on. So first, of course, you need all the individual ingredients displayed and ready to be assembled for the actual demonstration. But because a given TV segment isn't very long, I mean, we're talking 2.5, 3.5 minutes. Sometimes if they're super generous, like in the case of this segment, which you're gonna see at the end of this video, it's 5.5 minutes. But either way, that's not enough time to make the entire recipe. So for example, with these meringue nests, of course I have the egg whites and the cream of tartar, all the things you need in order to assemble the recipe. But then I also have the meringue ready to go to be piped out onto my cookie sheet. So that's 2 batches worth. And then you also, very, very important, total pro move, is to have the final recipe completed and displayed. Now camera guys love this, because what they can do is at the beginning of the segment, they can zero in on that final dish. This is like a tease for the viewers so that they know exactly what this segment is all about. They know exactly what you're making, and it just makes everything make a whole lot more sense for the viewers at home to get excited about what you're cooking. But then of course in the prep process, you might burn something might not work out so perfectly, so you might need to make another batch. And then it never hurts to have extra on set when you're doing that segment, just in case you need to throw some extra sugar in there, or oh crud, I ran out of lemon juice. It never hurts to have extra ingredients. Tip number 2 is to buy the best looking ingredients that you can find. So when you're at the grocery store buying all of your ingredients for the segment, you want to make sure that everything looks really good. So for the example of these meringue nests that I'm making, they've got fresh fruit on top. And so I wanted to incorporate some blueberries, and blueberries always look better when they've got a good bit of that white bloom on the outside of them. It just makes them look a little more earthy, gives them some texture, makes them look interesting. So never wash your blueberries. If you are putting them on TV, if you're taking pictures of them, don't wash your blueberries. Now the same goes for the mint that I used in this segment. So when I was at the grocery store, I was looking at the ones that are in the little plastic clamshell boxes. They're just looking super sad, and they wilt really quickly. Whereas if you use fresh mint that's still on the root ball, or you're getting it out of your garden, that stays super fresh really long. So just be really discriminating when you're picking your ingredients to make sure that visually they look top quality. Tip number 3, prep as much as you can ahead of time, because once you get to the station, you don't have usually a bunch of time to set up and take your time and be methodical about everything. In general, they give you about 30 minutes to set up. Some stations are different, some different shows, but 30 minutes is generally about how much time you'll have. So you need to have everything ready to go. You can't be whipping egg whites. You can't be dicing onions. Have everything all ready to go, so then you're more working on the display, making sure everything's exactly where it needs to be, double and triple checking so that the demo portion runs smoothly, that you're not not worried about prep work. Tip number 4, bring absolutely everything and anything that you will need in order to execute that recipe. Because these TV kitchens, they're not stocked with anything. There is literally nothing in them. Maybe they have a working stovetop, maybe the fridge works, no guarantees that the fridge works. There may not even be running water except for in the bathroom, so anything you're gonna need, you need to bring with you. That's bowls, that's plates, that's napkins, that's a fork for the host to be able to try your recipe at the end of the segment. Mixing bowls, microplanes, cutting boards, knives, absolutely everything you will need to bring with you. This even potentially includes a cooktop. There are certain TV stations that don't even actually have a working kitchen, and if you are cooking something that needs to be done on a stovetop, it's a good thing to have a hot plate and also to have an extension cord, because there's no guarantee that the outlet is going to be near where you're actually cooking. These are all things I have run into. These are all things that can cause extra stress, so if you are extra prepared, you're gonna have a lot easier time. And the one thing that I bring with me, no matter what, every single TV segment, whether I think I need it or not, I always have a can opener with me. Because that is the one thing that can totally screw you, is that if you don't have a can opener and you need something that's in a can, you're not getting into it. Because I had this situation happen once. I was doing a hummus segment, and of course you need tahini for hummus. And so I bought a different brand of tahini than I usually buy, and I went to go open it as I was getting everything set up and realized I pulled back the top, and gosh darn it, I needed a can opener to get into it. Well, I didn't pack a can opener. And lo and behold, there were no can openers in the entire TV station. I know, it's mind blowing, but it happened. And so I had to take my poor little knife to the top of it and get into it. But that is definitely a way to ruin your good knives and not the best way to go about getting into a can of tahini or a can of anything. So just to make sure that if you run into this situation, always be sure to have a can opener with you. Tip number 5, make sure to include props in your whole setup plan. So not only in the ingredients and everything that you need in order to execute the recipe, but then you want some things to really fill out the space and make it look visually interesting. Because a viewer at home, if they're just seeing kind of this basic kitchen with just ingredients, it just kind of falls flat. It's not interesting. Whereas in this case, I'm doing an Easter segment, so I brought lots of things that are bright and colorful, springy, pastels, flowers, all those kind of things to give visual cues that this is an Easter segment and just to make it look fuller. Because when you show up, it is literally a blank slate. There is nothing in that kitchen. There's no decor usually. I mean, some stations, but for the most part, it is a blank slate. So it's your job to fill it out and make it look exciting, interesting, and full. Tip number 6, make sure in your packing process, as you're packing all your props and your ingredients and your appliances and microplanes and everything, that you know where you've put everything, that you've got a good organizational system so that when you are ready to head out the door in the morning to go to the TV station, that you don't forget anything, you don't leave anything behind. So I've got sort of these little ghetto bins. They are not much to look at, they are not sexy, but they do a great job of containing everything, and they're pretty easy to lift or to put on a dolly once I get to the station. So I make sure to pack everything in those bins. Anything that's sort of larger or bulkier gets put right next to those. And then I also have a specific bag of everything that's refrigerated so that that all goes together. But the one thing that has messed me up before is if I ever have to put something in the freezer. This is when I bust out my Post-it notes, because there was a situation, I had a TV segment, we were doing breakfast burritos, and I love to use tater tots in my breakfast burritos, and so I had tater tots in the freezer, got to the station and realized I got everything out of the fridge, I had everything in my bins, but I forgot to get the tater tots out of the freezer. So now if I put anything in the freezer, I make sure to put a sticky note on the refrigerator bag to say, check the freezer, don't forget the tater tots, dingbat. Because a breakfast burrito without tater tots is just sad. Tip number 7, and this is a tip that I got from a catering company once, is to create levels in your scene. So for example, you're looking at this setup that I've done, you can see I've got things on cake stands, got things on little boxes. Not everything is just here on the countertop surface, because that just sort of feels flat. Whereas if you can create high points and low points, just again, more visually interesting, looks more professional. Tip number 8, make sure to take the labels off of all of your produce, take off any price tags, off any props. It just looks a little trashy and not so professional if all of a sudden the camera guy is scanning your scene and it's like, oh, that was $5.99. Now, along those same lines, and super duper important to make sure you're aware of, is if the show or the station has any special rules related to the display of brands and logos. I have been on sets, this is not typical, but I have been on sets where they will even ask you to put black tape over any brands that might be on appliances. So like on my KitchenAid mixer, I had to put black tape over the KitchenAid logo. Now that is not typical, that's not all the time, but certainly it is something to think about, especially if you are styling the food and you're doing all the prop setup, that if you're gonna have to do all of that, you're gonna wanna prepare it ahead of time so that you're not messing around with black tape while you need to be making sure everything looks pretty. Tip number nine. Be sure to bring a snack, bring your own food, bring your own drinks, because here's the thing. It may look all glamorous that this is TV, but the reality is there's no catering. I mean, maybe at some point you'll work for some high budget show or high budget movie or something like that where they'll have craft services, and that would be amazing. But every single TV segment I've ever done, it's every man for himself. So you gotta pack your own food because you do not wanna be hangry on set. Nobody likes a hangry food stylist. And finally, last tip, very important tip, is to clean up after yourself. It is your job to clean up all the food, to wipe down the surfaces, make everything look better than you found it, because there's no magical cleaning crew. If you don't clean up that space, that is then going to become the job of the producer, and if the producer is having to do extra work because you didn't clean up, they may not want to have you back. So I always pack some Clorox wipes, some paper towels, Ziploc bags for any leftover ingredients or leftover food, definitely some trash bags, because again, you can't bank on them actually having any of these things stocked in that kitchen. So bring all that stuff with you. Be sure to clean it up. And along with that, another way to get invited back is to leave the leftovers for the crew. They get so excited. I mean, who doesn't get excited for free food? I remember a segment and I was doing patty melts, and you gotta remember, sometimes the crew has been there since like 2 or 3 in the morning. So if you're doing a 9 a.m. or a 10 a.m. segment, they're ready for lunch. They're super hungry. And so I was doing patty melts. I mean, these guys were losing their minds. They were so excited. So again, just another really nice thing that you can do for people to get yourself invited back, to be that person who's fun to work with, easy to work with, and that people want to have in studio. So now that you've got your 10 tips and that you are super motivated to rock this party, let's go ahead and head on down to the station and actually show you how the segment turned out.
We have a fun show for you in store today as well. The calendar doesn't say it just yet, but it sure feels like spring outside. And of course, that means Easter right around the corner. And who better to help us make something festive, creative, delicious, yummy, adorable, all the adjectives you can think of. Food blogger Joni Simon making lemon meringue nests.
Nests.
How adorable.
Right?
Okay, I want you to see the end product first, and then we'll work in reverse. Look how cute this is.
They are pretty cute, right?
Oh
I had them on my Easter dessert table last year, and everybody just went bananas for them because they're just unique, they're different, but they scream spring.
They scream spring, and they're so tasty. And if you like a good lemon meringue, because I was telling you, the lemons on our tree this year are so big, so you probably have a lot of citrus as well. I like a good lemon meringue.
Oh,
I like
absolutely.
a good, nice tart one.
Yes, so we're using homemade lemon curd. You can, of course, buy it at the store, but homemade, nothing's quite the same as that. I have the recipe for this on my website. It's got a ton of butter in it, so don't tell anybody.
Okay.
But it's for Easter. It's for special celebrations, Mother's Day. But I really dial back the sugar so we can really monopolize on all those really tart flavors from the lemon. That's what we end up filling this with. But the fun part and what makes these so unique is the meringue portion of it. So if you want to see how I make the meringue.
I do, because I was wondering how it stands up without a crust, right?
Exactly.
So
it's like
cool.
it's low carb.
Right. It's perfect. We don't need the crust. And after you do it this way, you probably won't even want the crust anymore.
Precisely. Right. So we've got our stand mixer. You could do this with a hand mixer as well. I've got 4 egg whites. So the most challenging part of this recipe is actually separating the whites from the yolks. But if you can do that, you get those in there along with some cream of tartar just to help get the party started. That's a typical combination that you're going to find for any meringue.
Any meringue.
Exactly. Okay. And you're going to take this for a good couple minutes. It takes a good while. But then what you're going to do is castor sugar.
Castor
Yes,
sugar.
or you'll see it as superfine sugar.
Okay.
So it is not quite as granular. It's smaller grains so that it absorbs into those egg whites a lot quicker.
Not the baking sugar? Is that kind of what it is?
It's very similar to that.
Okay.
Exactly. And you're going to add that in a tablespoon at a time to our mixer. You don't want to do it all at once. You want it to be gradual. And what you'll start to see, again takes about 6 to 8 minutes, this whole process, but it starts to really double up in volume. It gets larger and larger. And then once that is all completed, you transfer it into a Ziploc baggie, which this is my favorite little trick, right? Like you fold down the sides, you put the stuff inside, and then we snip the end of it. Now, very important part is to make sure you've got some parchment paper down on a cookie sheet here, and then we just pipe these straight on. And so we've got that meringue, and we make the little nests.
So again, this is serving as the bowl, really, or the little pie crust. So you want to make have a nice little hole in there.
Yes.
Now some meringues are really airy. How did you keep yours from being so airy?
Well, it's just really about making sure that you whip it, but you don't want to over whip it. So once it really starts to look nice and glossy, because we really want these to taste like marshmallows.
Yeah, I was about to say, I got some on my finger, and it was so yummy and marshmallowy.
Exactly. So it's just about not over whipping it. Once it starts to look really nice and light and fluffy, a little bit glossy on top, that's when you know you're good to go. Now, here's the fun part. It's only 175 degrees to 200 degrees, depending on your oven.
So some run warm. Too much.
Exactly. So you just set that at like 175, stick it in the oven for 2 hours, and just leave it. Don't mess with it. About 2 hours. And what you're going to find then in the end is that if you kind of tap on it.
Listen. So
it's got a little bit of crackle on it, but it's still soft and pillowy on the inside.
And it's not burnt at all.
No, that's why we have that really low heat. And so then you can do that up to 2 days in advance and just keep them in baggie, keep them nice and fresh.
Perfect, because you don't want to stress the day of your event. This is perfect for a wedding shower.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, a bridal shower, a baby shower, as afternoon tea. This is perfect for anything in the spring.
And they're light and refreshing. They are a little bit decadent, but, you just want a little something fun.
And we have the recipe for this. And so, again, it does have butter, lemon, all the good things that you're
pretty
typical.
Simple. Yeah, it does take a little bit of time. Again, this is a little bit more time intensive, but what's great is you can make it days in advance
and then
just assemble it right when you're ready to party.
All right, so you've stuffed it. Now, what do you put on top?
So then we've also got some fresh berries. I really love fresh raspberries. Unfortunately, there weren't really any good ones at the store when I was there. So go with whatever's in season, whatever's looking good.
Because we go in looking for a certain thing, you may have to change gears a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. And just add a little bit of fresh mint. Get something really nice and fresh there. And then I don't know if you want to give them a taste.
Honey, you better believe I want to give them a taste. Now, I see that you have other berries here, strawberries. And you can use anything you want.
Oh, absolutely. I was even thinking it would be a really fun thing to add peaches to the party, especially when those come into season later in the summertime. But you're getting that little bit of tang, that little bit of zing.
So good. My eyes are closed because I'm literally trying to process everything that's happening in my mouth right now.
Well, and if you do the meringue right, it's got that nice little bit of crunch on the outside, but it's soft and marshmallowy on the inside.
And it's so tart up against the sweet.
Yeah.
Literally, it like goes, ooh, it's so good. It's so good. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Party in your mouth.
This is mine.
Yes, you have
This is mine for later. Dessert for breakfast. Okay, the cool thing is that Joni is so kind and gracious. She gave you the recipe on SonoraLiving.com.
So if you make the food look good, you make the set look good, very important you make the producer look good, and if you have a fun time doing it and you're easy to work with, well, it's a no-brainer. They're gonna invite you back, and they're also gonna recommend you for future opportunities. So just things to keep in mind. Hopefully these 10 tips have either got you excited about the potential to work in this space, got you inspired, or just turned you on to a whole new thing you didn't even know existed. But certainly, as always, you've got the comment section below for any questions you've got, or join us live on Monday. As I mentioned, I will be here on The Bite Shot answering all of your questions live. So thank you so much for joining me here in the studio. I hope you have a fantastic day. Hope you get yourself a cup of coffee or something caffeinated, or at least something delicious. And I hope you stay out of trouble. I'll see you soon, okay? Bye.